Sunday, we're gonna cover privacy. Okay, so this is gonna be the topic for today. Before we will cover the privacy, we will be talking about data classification and what is data and what is a structured data and what is not a structured data, and how can we prevent data from being exploited from our side, how to protect the data while the data at rest and motion, and also when we are using the data itself. Okay, so this is going to be all under the privacy topic today. So this is going to be like a long session. We'll try to try to explain as much concept as we can, and then an afternoon session we'll have a review and assignments. This will not be web assignments for the day. We'll give you another assignments, which is really covering file permissions and also how to set up data classification if we can. So this is going to be our this is going to be our schedule for today. Okay, for our website, if you guys went to our website, you can find here we are talking about data classification and what is data classification is all about, and how privacy is really different from security, and why there is so many privacy issues right now. And we see that new trend of attacks that's really attacking new corporate environment, and how these new attacks are really targeting our customer data, and that's why it includes also a privacy part. And then we will look at also what drive these kind of new regulation, okay, and how this new regulation will impact our policies, and how our policy will impact our day-to-day standard and security in order to protect the customer data and customer information. So this is gonna be this is like a little bit of kind of new regulation that is adapted worldwide, and we'll try to talk about regulation as much as we can. Also, we'll be looking at the technical part, how to really protect the privacy, and what kind of controls we can implement to really protect the privacy. So we'll be looking at tokenizations, we'll be looking at DLP solutions and data loss prevention solution and all the stuff. So this is also going to be part of our lecture today. So this is in a very brief what we're going to cover today: privacy and the technical control, how to protect privacy. So without further ado, I will give it one more minute to allow more people to log in, and then we can go ahead and explain the topic for today. Meanwhile, so Sarah, mashallah, looks very enthusiastic today. That's good, mashallah. I will just give it 1 minute, and then I'll ask everyone to raise his hand. Okay, so you guys can raise your hand right now. Okay, so here. Okay, so your sleeping schedule is getting better. Definitely. I mean, one of the really benefits of this bootcamp, guys, it's really, I would say, in my personal opinion, it's all about discipline. So if you, it will make you disciplined, especially if you are coming every day, same times, okay, for from 9 to 4. This is actually, I would say, so Bassam, I'm happy to announce that I have already success, mashallah. So Bassam already managed to pass Security Plus. So this is very good, mashallah, Bassam. I'm really happy that you already managed to pass your first certification in security. That is really, really good news, mashallah. And I wanted all of you guys, inshallah, once you finish the course, inshallah, if you have the opportunity to go for a international certification, this is will be really beneficial, guys. So inshallah, I hope for you all, inshallah, to get the Security Plus after we finish and I'm telling you guys, we are covering a lot of topics that is already included in the Security Plus. So inshallah, for you to study for the exam itself will not be hard, inshallah. Okay. Exactly. So that's exactly what we need. You need guys to motivate each other. You know, sometimes when guys go to the gym, they gather all the guys in a big group and then they hit the gym, right? So this is kind of things that we really need to do here. We encourage each other to really work hard to get more certification and also to get really more knowledge about cybersecurity. Okay, Naif is here today. I think Naif is like really is working in his next certification. That's why he's not really active in the city anymore. Right, Naif? Did I read you right? Okay, so inshallah, I wish you guys all the best for the certification. And again, if you guys wanted really my tip for certification, try always to get as much as you can international certification, because this is will really reflect in your resume, and it will make your resume more shining and distinguished. So here we go. So today we'll be looking at again a new topic, okay, and I'll explain where this topic exactly fell into in this category. So again, why I always like to start my presentation talking about the cybersecurity framework, because this is the overall picture of cybersecurity within an organization. If you manage to implement the cybersecurity framework inside your organization, you manage to really achieve information security in a really high standard way. Okay, and that's why we have already explained a lot of the topics here, from asset management, from business, environment, from governance. Today we'll be talking a little bit about governance, and especially data governance within the organization. So we covering this today. We already have talked in a previous session about risk management and risk management strategies. Okay, and it's what is saying specifically in this area. It's saying there is a revision of cybersecurity framework, because it used to be the cyber security framework version 1, but the version right now that is used in the market is version 1.1, which is released in 2019. Okay, and the whole new section in this, there is 2 new section in the new version, which is basically they added one category here, which is we covered already last week, supply chain management, and we talked about supply chain management in deep details, and why we really need to look at the supply chain management from the software perspective and from hardware perspective, and what kind of risk we can encounter if we don't look at the cybersecurity chain. We have explained this in the Thursday session. Also, it's saying in the version 1.1, there is a new category has been added, which is basically identity and access management. Also in Wednesday, we have covered identity and access management in deep details. So was the second time we talk about identity and access management and highlight why identity and access management is important. And also we have given you like a lab on the cloud, how to implement identity and access management, because the first thing that they emphasize you to do in the cloud once you have a cloud instance is you build your identity and access management. We talked about how to create users, how to assign user to groups, how to allow these groups to access certain instance, how can we manage the security policy, how can we implement multi-factor authentication. So this is all part of identity and access management. We have covered this in deep details in Wednesday. Okay, guys? So the topic for today is going to be a continuation for what we have started last week and in this course. So in this course, we're looking at really detection techniques, and we have explained a lot of detection techniques and a lot of rules within the organization to really look into anomalies and to find and to detect any abnormal activity or malicious activity. So this is what this course is all about. But in the same time, at the end of the course, they wanted to highlight that we don't have to really only look at detection techniques, but from time to time, we really need to look at the prevention techniques and implement these prevention techniques. And that's why it highlighted the risk management, supply chain risk management, and it's highlighting again identity and access management. Today, they are asking us, and we will see in today's session, is going to take us back to the first early beginning. When we mentioned in the first early beginning, we need to have an assets management. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
it's
so it's kind of taking us to this area specifically. Okay, and this area specifically is talk about asset management. We talked about asset management is what kind of hardware you have, right? What kind of application or software you have, what kind of communication links you have. We also talked in this area, guys, what how important is information is. Okay, and the importance of information. This is will take us to a topic called data classification. So under this area, which is asset management, there is a small subcategory here. It's called data classification. Why? Because each organization need to really understand what data they hold and in which system and how critical is this data and what is the impact of these data already compromised. So so today, guys, part of asset management, we mentioned that we need to know hardware, operating systems, software runnings, okay, application runnings, communication links running, printers, all this stuff. But in the same time, under this asset management, there is also one subcategory about data classification. So today we'll be looking at the data classification, how to classify the data within our organization. How can we really give different label for different data? What kind of data exists? Is this data is structured and unstructured? What is the difference between structured data and non-structured data? So today is going to be covering this specific area because later on, when you understand the data, okay, when you understand the importance and criticality of the data, now you can build your policies and your standards and your control to really protect all the data according to the label and according to the classification we will give. So this is a really important topic for today. Okay, again, this is also, guys, this diagram over here is basically is what we have already talked about in early beginning of this course. In order really to implement information security or to implement system security, we need to achieve three different pillars, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And we added to this non-repudiation. We will add to this also authenticity. We will add to this privacy, and we will talk about privacy in deep details. And we will add to this, we have already covered access control and audit. Okay. And as you can see here, guys, access control and audit, they are really going hand to hand. Means when you apply certain controls within your organization, you really need to be able to verify if these controls are really working as we are really meant for these controls. So this is part of cybersecurity. This diagram, guys, is really highlighting the information security program and how to implement information security program by ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And as you can see here, if under each one of these categories, there is a small subcategories here, which is basically highlighting how to really ensure confidentiality. So before we talked about, something like encryption, what type of encryption, symmetric, asymmetric. We talked also about hashing. We talked about digital certificates and PKI infrastructure. So this is all to ensure confidentiality, means the data will no one will access the data except the authorized person. So this is the confidentiality part. Integrity, we mentioned that integrity is all about we only allow authorized user to modify or to really change the data or tear the data. And we mentioned we can have ensure integrity by having digital signature, hashing, logs. So this is also we have covered before. Availability, we talked about contiguency planning in one lecture, and we talked about backup and failover and UBSs in another lectures. So this is basically we have covered all this stuff. Authentication also, we talked about the identity and access management. So the identity and access management fail between both of these two parts, the access control and the authentication. So how can we really authenticate someone? So this is IAAA concept that we have covered before. It's really coming here again because IAAA will ensure authentication and it will ensure authorization and it will ensure accountability. And we mentioned that accountability is really has to do something with non-repudiation. So I should have a logs in my system or I have record that the user cannot really deny later on they have done this action. Okay. And we talked about a little bit about audit before. And we mentioned that audit is basically a job where an engineer or an audit manager will come and check what you have done when it comes to security. So for example, you say, I configured a firewall. So they will come and check, have you really configured the firewall according to the policy of this organization? Okay, so maybe the policy was saying that you need to stop FTP traffic. So I will come and check the policy. Okay, the policy saying it should be really stopping the FTP traffic. I will go to the firewall and make sure that there is a rule, explicit rule saying that we need to deny this FTP traffic. So the audit is going to come to verify our work and to make sure that we have implemented the security controls in a proper manner. So this is the auditing job. We already talked about non-remediation, and here is privacy. And here is the definition of privacy. Here I will give you more complicated look at privacy, even from a nation level. But right now we're just going to talk about privacy in our information. So we have different kind of users. We keep different kind of informations about our customers and about our users. Okay, who can control this data? What laws and regulation will be applicable on these data? Okay, what happens if we have a data breach that is really affecting our customer and our employees, especially if this data is their health record or this data is their financial record? What should we do? So this is what privacy in cybersecurity. So privacy in cybersecurity, how we really handle customer data, okay? How we really protect customer data, how can we deal when the customer data is being breached, and what kind of regulation and standard out there to protect the customer data. Why this is becoming a really big topic right now, guys? Because we can see, and this is exactly why it's becoming a big topic and everyone is talking about privacy, privacy, privacy. Why, guys? Because in the recent years, we can see the attackers or the bad guys, they're moving their attention from the corporate environment data. Okay, so they used to before to try to steal your trade secrets. So they did something called, we called it before, corporate espionage. So this is already there, it's still there, okay? But we see also a new trend that target customer data, okay? So for example, Equifax, there's one very famous tax happened in the US maybe in 2017, 2018. It's called Equifax. They managed to really steal around 200 million records of financial records of US citizens. Okay, so this is kind of, you know, so why they are really targeting this data, okay? So this is one thing. So we have seen that the attacker shift has moved, okay? And the reason why they're stealing this data, guys, it can be used for two reasons. First of all, for financial gain. Okay, so they can take these 200 million records, and they can go easily sell it in the dark web, so they can make money out of it, or maybe selling it to a government, another government, which is, you know, can give them more money for this data, and another government can really do deep mining of this data and understand what kind of debts people have, what is really people do in the US and all this stuff. So this is one thing that's made the attackers attack customer data. Another thing, they can also do something which is like a ransom attack. So they held your customer data encrypted, or even they can tell the company that we have the customer data, we managed to exfiltrate this data, and we need you guys to pay us money. And if the company pays them money, this is also good for the attackers. So financial gain is one of the motives. Okay. Another thing that the attacker will do is also to use this data to launch more attacks against people. So they steal, customer data, and then they will send target phishing email to these people to phish them more, or to really to do extra attacks against them. So the attacker really have moved their motive to attack customer data. Okay, so this is one thing. Not only the normal attackers, even the APTs, which is we said they are advanced persistent threats, and nation states, they started to target each other data, which is basically we are living, as I mentioned, in the information era time where data and information is really variable. So even if small information about your customer can give me more insights about you, or if I manage to really breach the whole nation data as a foreign country, I can understand what is happening inside the country, and later on I can launch an attack against people and do so much damage for this environment. Okay, guys. So this is kind of things that we have already covered. I'm just explaining what is privacy and why privacy becoming a thing right now. Again, privacy becoming a thing because we've seen a lot of attacks that is really targeting private data, and we'll explain what is private data in one second, and what really considered private and what is not considered private. Just give me 1 second. I'm giving you a quick revision for what we have studied. Okay, so far so good, guys. Any questions? Okay. So this is kind of, basically a diagram for the Kelly chain. Okay, we're gonna study the Kelly chain and the attacks that will happen in our environments in more details in the next course, inshallah, when we start our ethical hacking course. But this is like a small thing that we really need to keep in mind when we wanted to talk about attacks. So we have threats, okay, and there is so many type of threats out there. There's normal hackers, there's script kiddie, there's ABTs, there's nation states, there's hacktivism. So there is so many hacker threats out there, okay? And so also there is non-technical threats. We talked about this as well, flooding, earthquake, and all the stuff. So this is all the threats. And this is most of these attackers, they will use different tools or different attacking tools. And these attacking tools can be tools that exist in the environments like Kali Linux or stuff. So we have really over 300 different applications to use in Kali Linux, but also they can develop their own kind of tools, and then they use these tools to really exploit vulnerabilities. And once they exploit the vulnerability, we mentioned that they can do something called executing their payload, and we explain what is the difference between exploiting a system and have a payload. And then finally, they achieve the results, and these results can be really the hacker objectives is basically maybe they were after your data because they uses it for a corporate espionage, or maybe they were doing this attack to encrypt your environment and ask you for ransom, or maybe they do this because they have a hacktivism agenda, or maybe nation state agenda, and so on and so forth. So this is kind of things that we covered in the Kelly chain, and we also covered last week when we talked about different type of attacks and different type of threats and how they exploit vulnerability. And we had one complete lecture about vulnerability management, how to really handle vulnerability within the organization, how can we give a vulnerability a score, and all this stuff. So we have already covered this in a very deep details last week. So this was one of the topics that we covered last week. And as you can see, guys, here, this is like a big picture for how to implement information security within an organization. So it talks about policies, and it talks about external audit, and talks about policy implementation, and talks about evaluation. So how this is all works, okay? Because this is somehow is what we have studied, but in a really I would say 20,000 feet view. So if you are very away from cybersecurity and you look from the cybersecurity from a really big pictures, you can see this. So let me explain how this works, because right now we are trying to conclude this course. So I'm giving you the holistic pictures. So what it's saying, what is really deriving a policy implementation, okay, inside the organization, and what really drive a policy, okay, or drive a procedures within the organization is basically two things. One thing is here, guys, is you wanted to be really achieving your objectives. So the business wanted to be really secure environment. They wanted to achieve their profit. They wanted to really have less incidents. So this is good. All of these guys are the for policy. So for example, let's say that I wanted to do my job in more secure way. I wanted really to authenticate users in a proper way. So that is can drive the multi-factor authentication policy. So we can say we write a policy that all the user must use multi-factor authentication to access our cloud instance. Okay, so this is what will drive. This is the business objective. Okay, but what else also the drive policies, guys, is basically legal or moral or social responsibilities. This is the regulator or compliance, and we really need to comply with also the environment that or the industry we're working at. Okay, so if you work in banking, you will have so many regulators and you have so many compliance to comply with. So, for example, you say, you know what, if you are dealing with credit card numbers, you should to implement this controls and this controls and this control. This is all policy. This is will drive your policies. And as I mentioned, policy is just a document that is stating what the management will wanted to do. Okay, and it's also we're stating what compliance or what regulator we need to comply with. And all of these will be written in policies. And there is so many policies inside the organization. Some of them are security policies, some of them are IT policy, some of them are technology specific policies. Okay, so end of day, we do the policies for two reasons, because we are not gonna wasting our time to write policy. No, we are doing policy because we wanted to state what is management opinion about certain technology, and also because we work in an environment where there is some regulator who's saying, you know what, do this, otherwise you will be fined if you don't do this. So if any violation happens, you will get a fine. So for example, if you don't protect your end user data or your customer data, okay, this is not good for the business, and this is not good also from a legal perspective, because it's not good for the business because it can cause you financial loss. Okay, if you lost your customer information, or if someone steal your credit card, and at the same time, it's not gonna be good from the legal perspective, because this customer can go back to the court and asks for a fines, and you have to pay the fines. And if they find you didn't really apply a proper security controls to protect the customer data, you will get also slapped with another fine. So from all the perspective, we need to have a proper policy that is can really reflect the management opinion, and also reflect what is the legal and regulator perspective from a certain point. And this is not only for cybersecurity, for everything. Okay, guys? And again, the policy is, as I mentioned before, is a document without teeth. And these document, guys, need to be implemented in order to be effective. Okay, if you have a good policy saying, you know what, you need to encrypt your password, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to really save your password as a hashed file, you need to add salt for your password and all this stuff. This is very good document. But if you never implemented, this document is worth nothing. Okay, because it's basically a document without a teeth. It will not implement. It will not be implemented. It will not be effective. Okay, and that's why we have something called policy implementation. And in the policy implementation, we have another document called procedures. So a step by step how to implement the policy. And finally, guys, we will have these technical controls. And these technical controls basically are there to mitigate the risk and to achieve the business objective, and to achieve also legal and regulator objectives. Okay, so once we implement the policy, we will have operating system rights. Operating system rights means the permissions, okay, the firewall rules that will be implemented, domain rights, event log definition, application right and permission. So all this will be driven from the policy. Okay, so this all technical control, guys, are really coming from to handle the policy and to handle the risk inside the organization. Okay, from time to time, you need to evaluate, okay, your security implementation here, and go and reflect in the policy. So for example, you find a new area which is not covered by the policy, bring your own device. You find so many guys in the corporate environment are bringing their own devices and they have their email running. Okay, so you really need you to understand, okay, let me evaluate. If this is going to be a risk for my organization, yes. So let me reflect and write a new policy that handle bring your own device and implement this policy and implement some security control to really handle the new risk and the new requirement for bring your own device. Okay. Also within a big organization, guys, we have something called audit. And I have explained audit in the beginning of this lecture, but the audit guys will be the one who evaluating the controls here and see if it's really working or no. Okay, so basically I said I already apply a very good IEEE. Okay, so let me verify. What do you do for identification? What do you do for authentication? What do you do for authorization? What do you do for accountability? Okay, once I audit, okay, once I did verification, this verification can lead that these are good things that we implement and it's everything is okay. We don't need to do any extra things. Or maybe we need to say that there is some areas here need modification. So let me go back and modify my policy to really implement. So for example, for accountability, I have found out that we do a great job for authentication authorization, but we don't really check the logs for who authenticated and who failed to authenticate. So let me go and write a policy that's saying that we really need to capture all the logs for authentication failures inside the organization. And then again, I will implement the policy and then I will do another audit. Okay. And again, guys, here you can also, if you have compliance manager within your environment, that's nice. But again, compliance manager within your organization is not good enough because maybe he have a limited scope. Okay, you really need to get an expertise from outside to audit the systems and to give you an opinion about certain systems. And this external audit, guys, can be really something you do because you wanted to ensure security, or something pushed on into you because you are working in a certain industry. So certain industry will not really admit your audit because basically you're auditing yourself. You will not say to everyone, I'm doing a horrible job. So they will require you to do an external audit, verify your controls and policies. So the external audit will come and check your policies, check your procedures, okay, check your implementation, and then they will come up with a report saying, wallahi, this organization are doing great job when it comes to identity and access management. They're doing a great job when they do penetration testing. They do a great job when it comes to file permission. But they have some issues when it comes to bring your own device or maybe encryption within the organization. So they will give you independent view about how you do information security. And again, what these guys will do, they will check your policy and they will check your implementation and they will take sample from this. So I will give you an example to really get everything in one place, okay? So then the external audit comes to your place, they should show me a policy for your password, how you handle the password. You can say, okay, you know what, our password should be more than 8 characters, should be complex combination of characters. It should be, we also keep password history for 5 times and all this nice stuff about policy. So this is the first thing they will check. So you say, okay, now we understand how your policy looks like. Okay, now they wanted to verify if you are implementing this policy. So they will go and they check your Active Directory. As I mentioned before, the Active Directory, guys, it has a place to really push policies to all the computer within one organization or one corporate environment. So they check the password policy, okay, and the password policy in your organization, how it looks like. So the password that your policy is good. Why? Because we find that the implementation here is Active Directory is matching what the policy is all about. And to do an extra step, the external audit, they will go to a certain machine within your organization and see how the user logging to the machine and see which policy from the Active Directory are implemented in this user. So now I can tell this organization are taking really policy in a good manner. Why? They have a policy that is stating how they manage policies inside the organization. They have procedures, how to do it. They have their Active Directory enforcing this policy. And we can see that the clients here are adhering to the Active Directory. So now I completed the full edit. I will give him a check mark that he really do the policy or password in a really good manner. Okay, guys? So good, so far so good. Do you understand what is this all about? Okay, I'm just telling you guys, this is like a big picture about the security, and I need you guys from time to time to really look into this because this is what will really differentiate between someone who's really techy, someone who is really technical, who can know how to implement firewall rules, how can he install IDS and IPS, how can he implement some controls like multi-factor authentication, And also, it will also differentiate someone who understands the full picture, someone who can go and sit with the management and say what is the management intent, okay, and help the management to formulate and write the policy, and then sit with the external party like a regulator or even a legal department to understand what is really the legal requirement to protect the data, and then started to formulate a policy or write a policy, and then started to implement this policy. So there's two types of guys inside the organization. The tech guys that you really need to be very technical and know everything about technicality, and also the managerial level. These are the manager in cybersecurity. This is should be able to really sit with the management, understand the objective of the business, understand where is the management is going, understand what is the compliance that's need to be implemented within the organization, and finally help to formulate the policy and write the procedures and make sure things are implemented in a timely and a proper manner. So this is another thing that I wanted to really cover today, or it's just all, this is all guys is like a quick reminder for what we have studied already. Okay, so again, what is data? Okay, because today we will talk about data classification. And when we talk about the data classification, we can understand that some of the data, okay, will be really belong to customers, and some of this data is belonging to the organization. And so the data in the that's belong to the customers, we really need to deal with it in a different way, because as I mentioned again, there's so many privacy laws are coming, and that ensure that the customer data is protected. And when it's a corporate environment data, you need to deal with it in a different way, because this is your data, so you implement data security. So we will implement two different data modules to protect the data, one called data privacy controls, and one is called data security controls. But we, in order to really understand the whole topic from beginning, need to talk about the data, what kind of data we exist in our organization, and then we'll talk about data classification in the last part. So if you guys can see here, this is what is data is all about. Data is a set of factors such as description, observation, and number used in decision making. Okay, so we are having some data that will allow us eventually to make a decision making. So what this means that if a customer's, okay, log into your system, okay, and he place an order to buy something, okay, and this is his order is considered data for the company, and will allow the company to do something. Order, okay, so I see that this user, for instance, he wanted a certain trousers, okay. This is will drive the company to go and buy more of these trousers and put it in the stores and then deliver it to the user, okay. If I see certain product that so many people are really ordering, okay, if I'm a manufacturer, I will take this kind of data. I will say, okay, I can see I have 300 orders coming for this specific, shirt. I need to call the manufacturer to create 300 shirts and send it to the customer. So data will allow us to do decisions, okay? And again, it's a set of facts, okay? Facts means I get an order, I will do a decision according to this order. Again, one more time, one example, okay, to data. Okay, you have a patient coming to the hospital. Okay, I'm getting all his details. So, for example, I will get his name. I will get his, for example, age. I will get any history of previous diseases, and I will get what kind of medication he has. Okay, and then I will transfer this data to a doctor. The doctor will read all this history and everything, and then when he sees a patient, he will recommend for him a certain medication or whatever. According to what? According to the data I collected already from the patient. So data will allow us to do a better decision. Even one time I was talking to a doctor, and he said I cannot really treat anyone without seeing his history or medication history, because I can give him a dose of another medication that can kill him. So without this data, the doctor will not be able to do the decision to do. Again, in the financial also realm, if you go to a bank, the bank, okay, will check your data, okay, and according to this data can really take a decision to give you a loan or no according to your previous records. So he said, okay, you take maybe a phone before, you took a car before, you managed to settle all of them, you didn't have any bad debts. Now I can allow you, according to this data I have in my system, to give you a loan or to give you maybe a mortgage for it to buy a car. This is called the credit score. Okay, so this is all sort of data, some facts about you. And again, why data is important, guys? We are living in the information era where the data is really allow us to do a lot of the tasks that we do in a day-to-day basis. And if you have a doubt, inshallah, when you start to work in an organization, guys, you will see how amount of work you do in computers and you do with computers, and you will understand that our systems right now, our governments, our oil and gas industries, okay, are really all based on IT systems and data. Okay, so this is enough about data. I give you the explanation for what is data is all about. We can classify the data, okay, that exists in our environment to two classification. One is called the structured data and one called unstructured data. So the structured data is really the data that exists in a nice diagrams like a database. So for the database, you have columns, you have some organized data, and that's why we call the database, when we try to look at and query the data in the database, we use a language called SQL. SQL is stand for a structured query language. So it's a structured data because the data is really in a structure. So we have the data in our database in tables, and the tables consist of columns and rows, and everything is easy to look at, and everything is very clear. Okay, so this is what we are calling structured data. So the structured data exists, and it represents the tip of iceberg. So it represents around 20% out of all the data we have in our organization. The 20% out of all the data is a structured data, and that's why. And this is the data which is very important to the organization as well, because this is where, guys, you have your customer, your payroll data, your maybe patient data, and all this stuff is going to be saved. Your website data, it's going to be all saved in the structured format. We have also the unstructured format, which is basically, this is the majority of our data outside the organization. Okay, but this is not as important as the 20% up there. Okay, it's a 80% here. And the 80% is represented by, files, videos, Excel sheets, PDFs. This is unstructured data. Okay, all this other stuff is unstructured data. And your responsibilities or your task is to protect the classified data here over the structured data, and also you are really need also to really protect the unclassified data or unstructured data. Okay, so you really need to do protection for both of them. So you will be implementing security for your database, okay, and you will be implementing security also for all the files that exist in your organization. And how we implement security, we go back again to the access control and to encryption and all these nice techniques that we learn through all the course materials. Okay, guys? Type. One more thing just to mention here, also to really be able to understand that some of the data that exists in our structure format, some of the data that stay in our databases can be really divided to two. Corporate data, okay, so this is really related to my corporate environment and my organization, and some of these data are really customer data. When we deal with the customer data, we really need to ensure privacy as well, because we will, as I mentioned before, we have so many privacy laws that right now coming and saying, you know what, customer data is specifically, if it's being breached, you need to notify them. You need to implement all the controls to really satisfy privacy. So all this stuff, how to handle this data, how to store this data, how to collect this data, how to take a consent from the customer to take this data. Okay, end user agreements, what end user agreements is all about. Okay, what I'm gonna do with this data when I'm collecting it from you. Okay, so this all the stuff, guys, we'll be discussing today. But I just wanted to tell you that the structured data is really consists of two parts. One of them is really corporate data. This is our databases that include our employees and our salaries and all this stuff. And we have also another part that's really related to the customers and how to really protect the privacy of this data. Okay, so far so good. Everyone understand what is data is all about? What is the structured data? What is an unstructured data? Okay, if you didn't guys really see the difference, if I really go very quickly into this topic, again, here is the difference between structured data and unstructured data, and how can we really use them inside the organization. So this is according to Gartner, it's saying basically it's estimated structured data to be 20%, 80% enterprise data. Okay, this is your image, audio, video, Word, Excel, and emails and spreadsheets. Here is numbers, date, and the strings. This is what exists in the database. Usually, it is the data is really in a rational database. And you guys, if you don't know what is rational database, it's basically is a database that consists of so many tables, and these tables are really related to each other by maybe keys and different keys. I'm not going to go through what is relational data, but you really need to understand that in relational data, if you have dealt with any SQL, you can find tables, and these tables are really connected together through different connections. So maybe the ID here is connected with the ID here. You have a primary key here. You have a secondary key here. But the tables really related to each other. This is what a relational database is all about. Here in another, the unstructured data, we don't have, we cannot display the data in a relational database. If you have guys, do you understand what I'm talking about when I talk about rational databases? Does anyone doesn't understand what is rational databases? Okay. Seems like everyone here is database expert. That's good. Relational databases? No? Yes? Okay. So Shaza, understand it. That's good. MashaAllah, Shaza. Okay, so Sarah is saying, yes, we have seen relational data. So again, when you look at the database, guys, you see it requires less storage, but it's more important. Less storage means you can find a huge database, and this huge database is 15 gigabyte or maybe 20 gigabyte, while you can see only a couple of audio or video files. Okay, it's more than 20 gigabyte. Okay, so developers, they understand relational data. I agree with Shaza. Okay, and again, easier to manage and protect with legacy solution. This is when it comes to the structured data and database. Here, it's really difficult to manage and protect with legacy solutions. Okay, so this is basically also the data. Also, there is something to really look at the data life cycle. Okay, how we create data. Okay, and how this data will be handled and stored. Why I need to explain this to you guys? Because later on, when you really deal with privacy, you really need to understand how I'm gonna collect the data from users, how am I gonna get their consent to store this data, and what is permission I will have to really distribute this data or share it with others. So in order to understand all these stages, you need to understand the stage of data lifecycle. Okay, so how can we create data? So data, guys, it goes through a life cycle. Okay, so what is the life cycles? If you can see here, this is the creation of data. So this is the first of all creation of data, and I will explain how we create data. We then, once the data created is going to be stored. Okay, once we store this data, it's going to use this data in a day-to-day operation, and it will allow us to make the decisions that I told you about it. Okay, and then if this data becoming old, I need to really archive it, or need to store it. Not a storage here, but the archive. This is really meant for the data which is old, and how long this archive will be. Okay, and then finally, if I don't need this data anymore, how can I really get rid of this data and destroy this data? So this is a destruction stage. Okay, so let's look at each stage and talk about it a little bit. This is not like really. Could be like the early stages when you start your career in data science. Especially, I know some of you have already studied data science in his in his university. So data science, we always bring these topics early beginning to talk about the data life cycles. So over here, guys, we can see here we have manual data entry. Okay, manual data entry means like when you go to the government the first time, okay, and you wanted to really create a new ID for yourself. So we started to give them your birth certificates, okay, some information about you, okay, what is your phone numbers, and then someone would be sitting at this machine, guys, and he would started to do this manually entry for the data. So he would say, okay, your name is Ahmad, your age is what, your date of birth according to the birth certificate is wherever, this mobile number is belonging to you, and then hit submit. Once he hit submit, your data will be moving to a storage where they created an entry for you now in the society. Okay, this is how data manual data entry looks like. Okay, and I'm sure that most of you guys have done this at one stage in his life when he was doing his national ID, or I don't know, a social security number, you name it, right? So there is also external acquisition, okay, and there is also capture from devices. Okay, capture from devices means some of data, okay, it's already, we can capture it using devices. So for example, if you go to a supermarket, you have something called barcode, and when you buy anything, there's a devices there, it's called POS. It can read the barcode, and accordingly it capture the code here, and then it will display the data here for this guys, and then it will help him to do a checkout for you. So this is also how to capture data using a device. Also, guys, we can collect the data from external forms or through data acquisition. And what is really data acquisition means? Data acquisition means, when, for example, when Facebook bought WhatsApp, okay, what happened is when Facebook bought the WhatsApp, they did also some sort of data acquisition. All the data that it used to be in WhatsApp now, it's now owned by Facebook. So Facebook really now becoming really acquired a lot of data. Why? Because he acquired all the WhatsApp. How the WhatsApp really get the data? By manual data entry. The first time you open your WhatsApp, in the first time you will enter your name, you will enter your phone numbers, and they will verify you are really who you are, and then this data will be in the database of WhatsApp. But later on, when Facebook already acquired Instagram or whatever, they acquired a lot of companies. Now they put their hands on the data here. Okay, so it was a manual acquisition in the beginning, and then companies can really get the data created by acquisition. So acquisition is big segment. Or you can just get the data by not manual way, by automated way, like sign up forms. The sign up forms is very well-known way. I know some of you coming from web development um, background, and one of the really how many companies are doing right now to do data collections is a sign up form. The sign up form is basically a form which is will tell you what is your name, what is your email address, what is your age, and then when you hit submit, this automatically will be going to a database, and then they will send you later on an email to verify. So now we understand all the ways. I will not say all the ways. This is most of the ways that we have to really create the data and the data creation. Okay, so we have now some data. We have your individual data. Later on, we can use this data when you purchase something from Amazon or from Loan.com. We understand what kind of person you are. We can do something called data mining to understand what is your hobbies in really buying stuff. So this is all kind of stuff that we is going to be later on when we talk about data science. But I'm just very concerned right now about the creation of data. Okay, and also, guys, you really need to understand that even when you're creating data, you really need to involve some sort of security, because this data, when I collect it, okay, I need to collect it in a proper way, in a proper format, so it will be a proper data here in the database, and it's not gonna be a rubbish that is gonna not be used at all. So I really need to implement some sort of security even in the data collection phase. Okay, we'll talk about these areas when we come to security. I'm just concerned about, and once we have this data, guys, are stored in the database. Again, storage mean I will store it in a structure format, and the structure format, as I mentioned, something like tables and names. And why we have tables, guys? Why I didn't save this data in a spreadsheet? Okay, this is should be a question. It comes to your mind. Why I didn't save the data as Excel? Why I didn't save it as a Access, for example? Why this all question? Okay, why I have to do it in a structured format? Okay, because guys, you know what? The problem with the files, okay, and an unstructured data classes, that when I add so many entries here in the file, this file would be extremely slow. Okay, so if you have a one Excel file that is 1 GB or 2 GB or 3 GB, try to open this file, guys. It will take forever, and it will crash from time to time to crash. And also, when you really try to find something in these files, okay, guys, it's gonna be almost impossible, right, to really find something because there's so many entries, and it will take so much time to look for entire the file. So this is another reason. Third reason is security. Okay, when I have a file here, guys, what kind of permission I will give to the file? Okay, first of all, if I wanted to have to give this file to someone, I needed to copy this file to someone. So now, how can these things can be secure? Okay, if I share this file itself to another party or to another person to just share it, okay, how can I ensure security? How can I ensure that this file will not be manipulated by this new person? Okay, so this is again, guys, what made us move from the unstructured way, okay, of handling the data. So back in maybe I would say if you go to the back 2005, 2004, database was not very common. The most common way is Access or maybe a spreadsheet to save data. But then we find out from security perspective is horrible. From the data size perspective is also not good. From sharing perspective, okay, is not good, because why I need to share the entire file. That's why we moved away from Excel and we moved to databases. Okay, so databases is easy because the data is structured. Okay, so it's easy to be searched. We already came up with a language to search it with SQL. And also giving a permission here, which is again security, is important. Okay, because I have a centralized location, I can allow my application to log in. Okay, and I can give a proper access control to say, okay, this application will log in to read only the columns or the rows, and that's all. That's all. In this kind of things, guys, it was horrible. Okay, because you have to share the file itself, which is not secure at all. So we moved to databases, and I explained the reasons. And again, one of the things that we really need also to look at when we talk about storage is how to handle the security of the storage. Handling the security of the storage, we are talking about the identity and access management. Again, one more time, we need to ensure who is accessing our database, what kind of authorization he has, what kind of accountability and audits I will be having on this in this. That's why we create security and identity access management. Okay. Another thing that you really need to keep in mind, this database is your crown jewels. Okay, crown jewels means very important assets within the organization. If you lost the database of your customer, if you've been breached on the database, if something really catastrophic happened to this database and you lost the database, you lost a lot of things, especially if you are working in finance or insurance or a hospital, you really gonna suffer a lot because you lost all your data. That's why we have also the recovery solution. And this is where we start to look at the things that we studied before, the backup and the stores, and also contingency planning and business impact analysis. And all the stuff's coming here. Why? Because the database is very important assets and we cannot lose it. And that's why we started to do something like disaster recovery, hot side, warm side, and all this other stuff. Okay, guys? So this is all falls in the storage part. Again, here is usage. Usage means how we really deal with the information in this database in a day-to-day basis. Okay, how do we handle this? And this is what allow us to make decisions within the organization. Okay, and so this is very important. I have given you guys examples. For example, if you are a patient in a hospital, if you are in a financial institutions and all this stuff, even if you are in e-commerce websites. So the usage of the data in a day-to-day basis is important, and also to secure the usage is important. Why? Because you don't really know who is trying to access your database from outside. Okay, because you can have a very nice e-commerce website, and you open this e-commerce website for business, and you have these guys are really attacking your website and trying to manipulate your database. Okay, so your database is in use. Okay, your web application is in use, and you have attacks coming back and left to your organization. So you really need to handle the security even in the data in use. So we need to protect our data, especially if our database and web application is exposed to the internet and exposed to the external world. We need to look at web security, okay? And what kind of attacks will be attacking our database from web security. So this is all, guys, it needs to come to your mind. And that's why tomorrow we'll be looking at web security, because this is kind of how the attackers really find their way to attack the database. The first early beginning the attacker will do, guys, is to really footprinting your website. Why? Because this is the entry point. This is where you are presenting online to them. Okay, so the first thing that attacker will do is say, okay, I wanted to target Cisco. Okay, what kind of information I will gather about Cisco? They will go to cisco.com. Why? Because they know cisco.com is somehow in DMZ, and the DMZ is somehow connected to internally. The DMZ is connected to internally. We have a database, which is important. So they will always try to attack your website. And then from attacking the website, they will go to and do something called island hopping to really reach to your database, or the same lateral movement. Okay. So we really need to also look at who is viewing our data, okay? And also if we are sharing this data with someone, and especially here in this stage, we really need to be very careful. If you wanted really a nice case about data sharing that caused a lot of fuss in the West, look at the 2016 election, and there was huge fuss at that election, especially when Trump won the election. He went back to Facebook, and it was called the Stanford. It was called it. No, it's called Exford scandal. Okay, so Exford scandal in 2016 election in the U.S. Okay, Facebook. Okay, as the biggest, basically, I would say basically personal data holder in the whole world. Okay, they shared their database, or they shared part of the database to basically to an organization in UK. Okay, so this is called Exford Labs, and the Exford Labs was hired by Donald Trump campaign. Okay, to see how can they manipulate people in Facebook. Okay, and they managed to manipulate a lot of people to the point that they said 20 million people has been manipulated by Exford scandal, okay, and they really voted for Trump. So we really need to be very aware of sharing the data. And then Facebook and Exford, they went to so many issues, and it was like really big. So this is also in data usage. We really need to look at the part of data sharing. Again, here, guys, the archival part. The archival means there's so many companies out there. They cannot just get rid of data as the way they wish. Like if I use the data, the user is not active for 2 days or 10 days, I can get rid of this. So there is so many laws out there. There is so many regulators out there. They will enforce, especially banking and hospitals and government institution, to keep and really to archive the data for a certain period. So, for example, coming from the investment banking perspective and from banking perspective, they will tell you to keep all the financial records for 10 years. So you're really obligated by laws that you keep the data for 10 years. So, and if you don't keep it, and they did an audit on you, and they don't find that you implemented this, they will give you a huge fine. So here, guys, data archive and should be also protected. Okay, available to use means what? Yani you have, for example, a database. Okay, this is where your current data is, and then you have another solution connected to this database. They called it the archiver solution, which is consists of a lot of tapes and a lot of backup drives that it can take the data and it's really stored here. And this data can be stored for years and years. And then if you just wanted to really go back to the data, you can just go and check the data. And this also, the archive data, guys, we mentioned it also before when we were talking about digital forensics. Archive data can really be helpful because it will allow you about certain event. So it's also from digital forensics perspective is good, and also to comply with regulators and industry standards is important as well. And finally, after the data here, guys, reach to the maximum allowed time to keep in the archive, we really need to look at how to really distract the data also in a secure way. Why? Because if you just deleted a file, okay, or deleted a tape here, and then you sold this tape to another organization, does it mean that they will not be able to recover the data? There's so many solutions that they can use to recover the data. So you need also, when you destruct or destroy these tapes, you need to do it in a proper way. So some of the organization will destroy it physically, okay? They will burn it, basically. Some of the organization, they will really do something called purging. And purging, you copy the data multiple times to the hard drive until it's really cannot be recovered. But again, this is not 100% recovery proof, because I have read a research before from a German scientist that she was saying that even if you replace the data into your hard drive 20 times with different data, or you deleted the data in your hard drive 20 times, or you formatted your hard drive 20 times, there is still way to recover the data after 20 times. So even they used to tell us before, if you do overwrite for the data more than 10 times, then it will be very hard for the attacker to retrieve the data. This research was saying that basically is even 20 times is not secure, and you really need to do it maybe 21 times or 22 times to ensure that you really erased all the artifacts of that data from the hard drive. So this is basically just into the introduction about what is data is all about, and what is the structured data, and how is the cycle of creating the data, guys, looks like. Okay, and this information life cycle, as you can see here, it's in start with creation and recipient of the data, distribution, records are stored and sorted and stored in the database using. This is where we make the business decision, maintaining the data. This is where we back up the data and make sure the data is safe. And then this disposition is disposal of data. Okay, guys. Organization often use a simple classification scheme like public or private or tenant. Okay, now we will be talking about, guys, how to classify the data. Okay, why? Because classification of data will allow you to really choose a proper control to save the data. So not all the data that we create in our companies is important. Okay, maybe we're creating a data about data duplication. So Nawar is saying, how about the data duplication? What do we mean by data duplication, says Nawar? You mean in the database, if we have a data duplication?
Yeah, I mean the last topic.
Data.
Yeah, I mean to take a backup for the database. Did you mean this? What you means about the last
exactly.
process?
So I'll tell you how to do backup for database quickly. Okay, so if we have a database, guys, which is very important, and we have so many data inside the database, which is very important for my company. So there is so many ways to do this. First of all, we can do a scheduled backup to back up this database and the database logs every day at maybe 12 o'clock at night, where we have minimum activity in the database. Okay, and we have a backup schedule every day to take a full backup or incremental backup for my database. So this is a solution. Okay, what I have seen also as a solution, this is really good, because if something happened to the system today, okay, destroyed, I can really come up in the morning and say, you know what, my database or my Windows is not working. I can get the backup. I can have my Windows machine up and running, and I can restore the backup. So this is a way to restore the data if you have an issue with the data. Okay. Another organization, they said, you know what, our database cannot be down. Okay. It cannot be down even for 1 minute or even 2 minutes. Okay. So what is the solution? They do something called the replication. So they have 2 databases in 2 different sites. okay, and they are connected using a very high speed
So
links.
it is replication, not duplication.
Replication.
Mhm.
Okay, so the replication means that every single event that happened in this database, it will be copied to the database. So if I have this database is down, this database will can come up and then will really work as exactly the same database that has already been there. Okay, guys, so this is the two ways that we handle this. And sometimes you already have a database that exists in their premises and another database that exists in the cloud, or maybe they have the database that exists in the premises and another database exists in a hot site. Okay, and I remember we used to do the failover situation check because this is really wanted to check if the other database is up to date and can handle the load.
So, Mr. Shadi, does this explain the destruction?
The structure of what? You mean the structure of replication?
No, actually, if you go into the last slide, the previous slide,
Let me go back.
the previous slide,
This one.
slide number 8. Yeah, this is the last process for the last stage for the database.
This one,
I mean,
destruction.
yeah, I mean, is the replication one of the process of the destruction?
No, destruction means to get rid of the data. خلاص, I don't need it anymore. Not for archive reason.
To kill the data.
Yeah, exactly. To get rid of it, to just let it go. خلاص. Now
So,
it's like, for example,
continue. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
So the replication in which stage we can yeah.
Okay, and the replication is in storage. Okay, you need to make big backup and recovery solution here in the storage. Once your data in the database, okay, you are worried something will happen to this database, right? So you create right away a backup and replicate. So this is gonna be here. Okay, great. So, but very good question, It's good that you understand where it's important also to do a backup. Once you have your data is in database, now the database becoming valuable for you. Okay, now I wanted to ensure availability for the database, how to ensure availability and confidentiality and integrity. Availability, we can do backup and replication procedures. Okay, guys, we talked about this information life cycles in deep details right now. And then again, we are coming to a very important topic, which is classification. Okay, how to classify our data. Okay, and why we classify our data to start with. So this is a kind of question I wanted to come to your mind when you look at the classification. So classification basically, not all the data that we create inside our organization is important. Okay, some data is more important than other. For example, right now I have a database. Okay, and this database will consist, for example, for multiple tables. And let's say that one of these tables are our customer credit cards. So this is very important table that exists that has a lot of valuable information for my organization. So this data specifically are really, really important data. Let's say I have another table that consists of all the people that I use for example, cleaning or external service. Okay, so this is not the same as the one that it has all the credit card. Maybe the credit card, I will apply different techniques and controls to hide this data, to encrypt this data. But I don't mind if someone really can find out who is the cleaning or who is the company that I'm dealing with when it comes to cleaning. So it can be there, but it's really not important. Okay, that's why I will not spend technology and things to really do to protect this. And as we will see later on, some technology like tokenization, how to really or really hide or masking the data that exists in the database and to really control the data. Again, why I would do these controls or why I would get a very expensive technology to apply, it's according to the data value for the organization. And that's why we need a data classification. Not all the data that exists in the database important, okay? So I really need to see how important, how critical is data, and then later on I apply a class for this data, and then later on I can implement a proper control to protect the data. So this is the whole scenario. Okay, so In order to look at this, some companies, when they deal with the data classification, so for them, some data is public. Anyone can see it, okay? So if I have, for example, an event that's happening in a certain area in Jeddah, I wanted everyone to see it, I would put it in my website, let everyone come to the event. I don't mind, okay? This is a public data. I wanted everyone. Some of the data is classified data, okay? So like what? Like how much I sold from a certain product, okay? Where I'm getting the items for certain products, okay? What is manufacturer secrets to create this product? This is a very classified data. I really don't want anyone to know except the team and within my organization who's really working on this. Okay, so this is what we call classified data or important data for the company. And this is really a thing that you really don't want anyone to see. So the scheme here of the simpler classification is public, okay, private, internal, and restricted. So this is kind of restricted or classified. How about private internal? Private internal that I can allow all my employees to know about it, okay? So this is between me and my employees, okay? So for example, let's say I managed to really secure a new deal with the government, okay? I can come to my employees, you know what? Today, I'm not gonna tell this to the public, but I'm telling you guys for the next 6 months, we're gonna be working in this deal. We have secured a deal with the government to do so and so and so. Okay, so basically, this is can be disseminated inside the organization, so it can be sent to people inside the organization. Let's say I'm gonna give you guys a raise for 10%. So this is 10% will affect us. This is really good news, not for the public to tell them that we raised everyone 10%. Also not classified because everyone in the company will know that everyone will get 10%. So this is kind of information that's really something called we internally or private. So everyone inside the organization know. Public shouldn't know about it, okay? But is also not classified because everyone inside the organization can know, and then restricted means only certain teams or only people who work in a certain project will know about it. This is very simple. And again, if you wanted to really to see this classification, it will be something called public, okay, and then for internal communication data, and then finally the last one, classified or restricted data. Okay, classification may be applied manually or automatically. What we mean by this, guys, means when you are really creating content, okay, or you're creating data, this data I can really label it as classified, okay, manually. What we mean by manually, you created a new files, and this files is very important and has a lot of data. You can really right click and start manually to set the permission of this file and make sure this file is classified. There is also some data classification application. We call it Right Access Management or RM, Right Access, RAM, okay, solution that can allow you to really assign the access and labels for these data, okay, in an automated way and in application level. So we can do this manually or automated. This is what we mean by this, guys. The downgrading of the classification label over time due to the information no longer required, the additional security protection provided. So the downgrading this, guys, what we mean really, we mean this is the declassification. Okay, what we mean by declassification in a very simple way, that sometimes when the data is old, okay, I don't really need to keep it classified, and then I don't really need to protect it. And that's why you find sometimes the American government, they say, okay, you know what, after 20 years of a certain event, we don't mind to tell the whole world what happened in this, okay? That's why there was a huge fuss about who killed John F. Kennedy, and they were requiring Trump administrators to release how John Kennedy has been killed. Why? Because John Kennedy killed in the 70s or 80s. So it's been about 50 years about the incident, but still the American public doesn't really knows how he's being killed and what is really, and they know he killed it, but they don't know how he killed it, right? So there's some mysterious part about the killing of John Kennedy. And that's why from time to time you find that the American, news, they tell you what happened in Afghanistan 20 years ago. Why? Because the data moved from classified selection to declassified. And when we have the data moving from according to time, then this is no problem. So, for example, okay, how to use, for example, how to make, for example, tires. Okay, how to make a tires. Okay, 20 years or 30 years ago, the factory will never tell you how they make the tires. But now you can find a public information out there how to make tires in deep details. Okay, so basically, some data after a long time, it's not a big deal to classify. Okay, but right now, how to make a new iPhones 14 and what components are used in this iPhone is trade secrets. No one will share it with you. So everyone will be really using it. But maybe after 50 years, this is gonna be like very primitive stuff. People, I think they will be able to do it in the primary school. So they don't mind to really declassify this information. Okay, guys? So this is the classification. So we are going to this nice diagram over here. This is really the consequence if a data has been saved. I'm sorry I didn't talk about classification enough, but this is kind of things you need to keep in mind. That if you didn't protect your data, okay, there is some consequences and some, I would say, damage to you as an organization, and that's why we've seen a lot of terminology right now is about due care and due diligence. Okay, and due care and due diligence, guys, in a very simple way, that if the company or the organization or the government institutions are really practice a sound practice to protect the data. So if they don't find you really doing your job to protect the data and to really practice the really latest and greatest technology to protect the data, they can give you a huge fine, and sometimes it can reach to the jail. So there is a consequence if you don't protect the data, and these consequences are really divided into categories. One of them is financial categories. So this is financial, could be you're losing your revenue, you're losing your customer, you're getting a fine because you didn't protect the data, you're getting lawsuits from your customers because you've been breached. So this is all consequence, financial consequence, and also there is intangible consequence, which is basically not money. They mean you're losing your customer trust, you're losing your reputation, image, and all the other stuff. So we are talking here about that we really need to protect our data. So here the reputation damage could be one of the consequences. I explained the reputation damage before, and again, after so many attacks in Uber, okay, you can find that people started to say, Uber is not secure. I'm not gonna use Uber. Maybe I will use another organization like Cream or whatever. So this is another thing. So this is opinion of the organization become negative. Okay, why? Because you're not taking our data in secure way, and that's why sometimes I really find it's really dull, really stupid. If people know that Facebook is being breached over and over and over, and they still put their data in in Facebook. So it's like kind of people didn't really learn that their data is not secure there. So this is kind of things. I wouldn't say that it's really important, because if you don't put like really important stuff in Facebook, but if you put your family pictures, you put your personal life stuff there, and then your data has been breached. That's all. Everything about you is being breached. So it's not really. I didn't understand why still Facebook is a place to keep the data. So, or maybe they just do it because everyone does it. Yeah, I agree. This is another opinion. Yeah, this is like the copycat style. I agree. So yes, so identity theft also is really common consequence, guys. And identity theft means that someone managed to steal your customer data, and then he gonna use this data, especially in the US, some certain data can be used to really impersonate someone online. So this is what we call the identity theft, especially if they can reach your social security number, your date of birth, all this, your phone numbers and all this stuff. They can really impersonate you online. So this is what we mean by identity theft. And identity theft is really bad in the US. So this is also one of the consequences if you didn't protect your data. So company and or customer information become public, and when they become public, may require public disclosure. That means you need to notify people who has been breached. Okay, credit monitoring costs. Okay, this is will cause you a lot, also a cost, because if you didn't protect the data and then it's been breached. Okay, guys. Again, this is the picture that I was telling you guys about. We have data leakage, and the data leakage can add to a direct loss. And this direct loss is going to be legislation, violation of regulators, fines, and the customer compensation. Sometimes you need to set the customers. You need to really, you can affect your business, can reduce the sales, can also, you need to pay a restoration phase and incident response team phase fees. So this is all kind of things that you will encounter when you have data leakage. Also, there is indirect losses over here. This is the share price fall. This is especially for the companies who is really listed in the stock market. When they have a major breach, you find some of the stock price for this company goes down. So, for example, when Facebook they faced an outage. An outage means they are not accessible. The website is not accessible. So what happened at that time, guys? We can see the price of Facebook went down. I think in one day it went down like $10 billion. So this is like was a crazy loss for the company. So that the price is losing, because you know what happened when you're seeing the stock price for your company is losing. Then you will say, okay, why would I stay in this company? So I will sell the stock as well. This is will cause more like a domino effect. People will start to sell more and more, and the price will really fall really bad. So this is not really good for the company. And again, company reputation, customer loss of face, and this is basically the company, the customer does not really trust you anymore with their data, and so on and so forth. So this is all consequences of losing the data, of losing basically of attack. So this is also consequences, fines, and this is, look at this, guys. I just wanted to give you this example, and then we'll go for a break because it's been like a long morning. So we're gonna give you some tea break. So look at this. These are the fines, okay? And for example, in this specific case, we have Uber, okay? They have a data breach in 2016, and they didn't disclose it, even though there was a law that if the customer data has been breached, okay, you really need to disclose and notify your end user, okay? So this is what happened in 2016. So Uber at that time paid the hacker $100,000 instead. And then there is a law, then these things, then really you cannot trust the hacker. So the hacker released the data on the dark web. What happened is they got the money from Uber, and then everyone find the data in the dark web. So what happened is, so there's a lawsuit against Uber, and it costs them almost $150 million. Okay, why? Because they didn't notify the end user they have been breached. So one fines, I'm telling you, this is a huge number. 150 is like $500 million only in one lawsuit. Okay. Again, guys, Equifax, was very big credit score organization in the US. They had a major breach in 2017, and then they didn't disclose it, okay, until the data started to leak. They tried as much as they can to really cover about these attacks, and they ended up paying $700 million as a fine for not really disclosing this, okay? So again, intellectual property is one of the consequences also for data breach. If the attacker managed to really reach your intellectual property, this is like, how do you design a new aircraft, how you design a new phone, how you design a new, or how to implement a new software. This is all intellectual, how you build a new router, because this is all intellectual property. It actually could be a consequence of a data breach because the attacker will have their hand on this kind of diagram. Okay, guys? So you really need to do a notification. You need to do a notification internally. Okay, so internal process to notify your organization that has been breached. External escalation So this is basically, you need to come up to the public and say, and also public notification. Okay, that means that you need to inform the public, especially your customer, that they have been compromised. They can, so they can really take care of, if they wanted, for example, to stop their credit card, they can stop their credit card. If they wanted really to change the details, they can change the details. So this is all the notification need to be done. And finally, we'll be looking at here data classification again. We'll look at the data classification. So let's go for a tea break. It's really about time to get some tea break. So how about we come back in 15 minutes, guys? 10:50. Would that be nice? Okay, so we go get some tea, and then we come back and talk about data classification. We already talked about data classification, especially if we have a small organization, but there is a bigger data classification. When you guys come back, we will explain it, inshallah. Okay, see you guys in, inshallah, 15 minutes. I mentioned to you guys why data classification is important. And again, not all the data within your organization or whether your corporate environment has the same sensitivity. And here in this example, they are giving you an example between the license tag numbers in your car and the health record. Which is more sensitive in your opinion? Okay, is it the health record or the license number in your car? Which can be made public and which it should be really classified? This is a question for everyone here. And why? Exactly. So we have Ibtisam saying that the health care records, it should be also very private data. Okay, no one knows which kind of diseases you have, and you don't share it with anyone. But again, the license tag number, guys, for a car, okay, it's in your car. Everyone knows about it. So even the government website, sometimes they come up with a new license car plate. They also publish it in the website. You can use the license number to go to your fines and check your fines as well. So this is kind of public information that is really not hurting anyone to be able to know about it. So, but the health record is something especially related to you. If it's being disclosed, it can cause embarrassing to some people. It can cause really, bad publicity, and that's why it should be protected. And only the doctor that is treating you should be able to have an access to it. So this is again takes us to, that's not all the data is the same, and we need to have a data classification. Okay, different level require different security and handling. So means if I have data classification, some of the data can be classified, some of the data could be secret, some of the data could be top secrets. So every single level of the data classification require different kind of controls and require how we handle this data. Okay, guys, we need additional permissions. We need a different process to view restricted area. Okay, guys. So this is for, in this example, I just found a nice example here. It's saying that how to really protect our data from loss, because we mentioned that if we lose our data, guys, we're gonna have a consequences, and this consequence will cause monies. And we agreed that very important data is gonna be here in the databases that we have in our organization when we started to do structured data. And we have some individual here, guys, are having an access to this data, okay? And we are very worried about data loss, okay? Because we said data loss can cause us fines, okay? Can cause us reputation damage, can cause us financial damage. So we really wanted to really do data loss prevention. And that's why there is a huge new techniques are there been for the last 10 years. It's called DLP. And DLP is stand for data loss prevention, and data loss prevention is a technique to prevent really data leaking from your company and causing you fines and damage in reputation. So in a very simple scenario, guys, we can have our database is secure. We can implement permission here. We can implement a lot of, identity and access management here. So we have some users, they do have an access to the database. The problem with this diagram, guys, is user basically. So the database can be really secure, can really we put a lot of time and effort to secure our database, but we have one user who accessed the database and then started to copy data to files. If he started to do copying of data of files and he kept these files in his laptop and he went home, okay, and this laptop is being infected by a virus or infected by a phishing attacks or whatever, okay, all this data can be leaked outside. Okay, so how the DLP solution is all about what, guys? Is all about really to quarantine and to look at what the user are accessing, okay, and what they are copying and try to paste somewhere else. So I wanted a really a solution that can understand what I am copying from the database. Do I have the permission to copy this data or no? And if I don't find the permission, it will block my action. Okay, so the data will never leave the database. And we mentioned we're gonna secure our database with all the identity and access management and the right permission. So we are not really, and we encrypt the database and we make all sure that the database is secure. At the same time, now I'm worried about these users who's accessing very sensitive data. And maybe when he accesses this sensitive data, he can send it to email or he can by accidentally upload it to the internet. So I wanted really to control the access between the users and here, and not every access, the access for the permitted user. Only permitted user can access the database. So I wanted to really, when he accessed the database, what did he try to do? Did he try to copy something from the database? So at that time, I can do a preventive techniques, and this preventive technique will stop him to copy anything to a files or to a folder, okay? Another technique as well, if I found one of the user here is accessing a database, and then he take a screenshot and he wanted to send by email, okay? This is sometimes people doing this. Why? Because he wanted really to leak some data outside. So I need to quarantine this email. That's why they said DLP solution does have so many multiple way to handle the attacks or to handle DLP. So DLP, for example, if someone accessing and copying the data, it can prevent this or can block this. So blocking is one of the techniques, okay? If someone is taking a screenshot and send them by email, it can quarantine his email, okay? If someone is trying to copy data to his mobile, to his laptop, it will stop him. So this is also block, okay? And we can use the DLP to log. What we mean by log, guys, if some suspicious activity happen, I will need to have a log. So later on, the administrator at the end of the day will come and check the log and say, you know what, this behavior was not acceptable. Let me enforce a new policy. Okay, guys. So here, the DLP solution is what really a solution to really prevent the data loss. And again, where is the data loss? After we created the data, after we stored the data, we have some users who has access to this data. This user can really copy the data to their desktop or to the laptop or maybe send it by email. I wanted really to control this communication between the users and the database or very important data stores. Okay, guys, do you understand? This is how it works. And this is kind of, data DLP actions. It can block, it can quarantine, okay? And sometimes if you really wanted to publish the data online, okay, it will encrypt the data so it will not reach in a really readable format to the outside. Also, you can justify, and sometimes if you really need to copy file, it can give you saying, okay, in order to copy these files, you really need to get approval from the management, okay, that you are copying these files. Sometimes, sales team need to have some presentation in their laptops to show a client or to give a customer some demonstration. So in that time, we need a justification why you need this data, and we get approval from your management to allow you to copy the data to a USB or to a laptop. Okay, guys? So this is a way, this is how DLP is used in a very simple way, but it's again, it's important. And the whole idea here is to restrict network access from my end user to my data, and also protect my data from data loss. Okay, so this is another thing that we need we'll look at again in the more details when it comes to the data data loss prevention. Over here, guys, we're talking about there is so many ways to classify the data, and some of these data we are classifying the data based on the data type. Okay, so here it's saying that it's a tag or label to identify a piece of data under a subcategory of a classification. So here we have some data over here, okay, and under this data, I can give a label saying this data specifically is personally identified information. So this is for this part of the data. Another label I will give it for financial information, okay. Another label I will give it for sensitive personal information. This is like a secure SSN, security social numbers, okay, or social security numbers, okay. There is also a label I will give it to the data, okay, to say this is gonna be the health record and the personal information health records. Okay, so there's so many ways to do the classification of data. I mentioned in a small, simpler organization, they will classify the data according to the public for internal use as a classified or restricted. Okay, we can again come to our organization and classify the data according to what type of data we are dealing with. Is it financial data? Is it healthcare record data? Is it personal data? Is it high sensitive personal data? So this is another classification. We can also, again, classify the data as we mentioned in the MAC, which is mandatory access control we studied before, that some military institutions, they are using classification, which is top secret, secret, and classified, and then public data. So this is also another way to classify the data. Again, what we're trying to do here, classification the data will allow us to really implement a proper security to really protect our data. So if I have top secrets data, I will not deal with it when it comes to security controls and when it comes to implementation of security controls like classified data. And it's not going to be the same permission. So we have to really look at these type of things when we look at the classification. Okay. Again, there is so many data that we can really look at, guys. There's something, and all of them, by the way, guys, are not the same when it comes to implementing control to protect them. So patient information, this is really high top kind of information. I need to protect it. Financial information is the same. Again, here, user activity. Someone logged to the system, someone logged out. Is it as important as financial information and patient information? It's a type of data, okay? But it's not as important as both of them. System configuration. System configuration is important if it's there. Okay, how can I protect it? Is it the same as financial information or no? So you really need to label this, okay, and give a classification here in order to implement a proper control. Customer details, okay, your customer details. So this is high-end kind of classification that can really cause the company and the organization a lot of damage if it's been exposed or leaked. User activity, again, username and password for our customer. Is it an important data? Credit card details. So this is all a type of categories that we really need to deal with. And again, by the end of the lecture, you'll find there's so many solutions out there to really protect, for example, credit card details, username and passwords. We'll talk about it by the end, okay? So this is another way. So data classification, this is a private data for a company, proprietary data. Proprietary data means that this is where the organization have developed something, have created new software, have created new hardware. So this is data that is a property of an organization. Okay, it may also include trade secrets. This is how they do some stuff. Often data unique to an organization. So for example, here it always comes to me as a funny story. You know how what is the most important secret for Coca-Cola and Pepsi as a soft drink company is how they really make the mix of Coca-Cola to be bubbly and really a drink that everyone drink. So this is really one of the highest trade secrets, right? So this is where you don't know even, and that's why there is no much competition. You find 2, 3, 4 companies that they are dominated the whole world here, because no one really knows how to create Coca-Cola. Okay, because this is considered a trade secret for them. Okay, and if you wanted even more funny story, you can just go back 100 years ago when the Coca-Cola started really to be sold in the US. Okay, and you find that the Coca-Cola, it used to be a mix between cocaine and heroin in a sugar drink. Okay, and then they found out that cocaine is addictive substance and heroin is an addictive substance. So they stopped to make it because they found out the Black American, when they drink Coca-Cola that's mixed from cocaine and heroin, it gives them a lot of courage to stand against their masters. So they stopped to add cocaine and heroin to Coca-Cola, and they substitute this stuff with another stuff. So it's really interesting to understand how they made Coca-Cola and how they are keeping it as a really as a secret until now. So here, guys, BII, which is very important thing right now, because BII is where we can really get involved with privacy here. It's a personally identified information, data that can be used to identify an individual. So any data that can be used to identify individuals is really important, because if someone managed to really exfiltrate this data, it can cause you fines and it can cause you damage in your reputation. So stuff like your name, your date of birth, your mother maiden names, and your biometric data, okay, all of this is BII, and that's why there is a lot of technology right now, especially in controls, security controls, to really anonymize this data, or to really mask this data so people cannot see it, or even to encrypt this data and to canonize this data so no one can see it. And for sure, they cannot really identify who you are. So you're buying something from a supermarket, it really does not show you all the credit card number. It shows you the last 5 or 4 digits. This is kind of data hiding or data masking, so no one can really understand. And your full name was not gonna see. So your receipt, even when they print it out, no one can really link the receipt to you as a human. So this is all kind of, data protection that exists right now to protect your personal identifying information. So no one can link their credit card with a name here and try to find out who you are. So the credit card will be hidden and your full name will be hidden here. Okay. Another also data that we really, as a classification, is really important right now is PHI. It's called Protected Health Information. And this is what the patient record is all about. And we can see there's a lot of regulation, okay, especially this regulation is really implemented these days. Something like HIPAA. This is HIPAA is basically is a regulation that's all the organization, the healthcare organization, really need to protect their patient data, okay, and really need to implement a lot of security controls. And that's why you can find nowadays, guys, so many hospitals be asking for information security engineer or information security manager. Why? Because they were trying to really protect their patient data, and there is a regulator that pushes them to protect them. So they're hiring people a lot right now to protect their patient privacy data and identification data. Okay, so health information associated with an individual. This is what PHI, it's the health status, healthcare record, payment for healthcare, and much more. All of this need to be protected, and that's why you really need to implement security control for this. So we again back to we need to hire more people in the healthcare sectors. Okay. Also, data classification include financial information, government data, customer data, and this is where you really need to handle the customer data in a more secure way in order really to protect the data from violation. Okay, again, this topic, it's called declassification, and declassification means once the data is not classified anymore, okay, that's after 20 years or 10 years, okay, then how we handle this data and make it public. So this is what this declassification is all about. They have a constant need to classify the data. There is another semi-reverse process. This is what declassification is all about, in which the institution reduce the classification of data and change this classification in known to declassified. So, for example, the US government, what they did in the recent thing that's happened in the news, I was saying this is kind of declassification as well, when they started to really release photos for some stuff like UFO, okay? And this was like a big thing this year. They used to have this classified in about UFO and what they're finding about UFO and what kind of speeds UFO have. Okay, but then in the last year, guys, they started. So this year they started to declassify this data. So you can see a lot of footage right now coming from different bases saying that's okay. We have already witnessed UFO, and they chose you the speed of these things. So this is kind of things that happens, especially in the US about UFO. Sorry, about the declassification. It's a process that takes place when the data no longer needs to be classified or protected and can be made available to much of employees or published to the public. Okay, guys? So this is another thing that you really need to be aware of. Okay. So here, guys, it's saying legal requirements. And again, if you guys remember early beginning of these lectures, we have already talked about that the legal requirements means that's what drive our security controls and what drive our policy inside the company. So there is two certain external factors that drive our IT policies and IT controls, and that's what leads to controls here. So this is controls, okay, and this is our policy. It's two things: business requirement, okay, and then legal requirements or compliance requirements. Okay, that is what will create us, will make us create policies and enforce this policy and with a standard and with controls. So any type of information or asset should consider how a compromise of this information can threaten the three core of confidentiality, integrity, and the CIA. So this is basically, he's talking about criticality here, okay? How a certain data can really be critical and can cause an impact if it's really being compromised, and the criticality can be really defined according to three criteria: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So this can be questions in an interview. Okay, I had these questions in interview. How to do business impact analysis. Okay, so business impact analysis is all about to find an impact of an incident on a business. Okay, how you can really measure the criticality of assets. Really need to measure the confidentiality. Is the attack will be compromising confidentiality, integrity, availability, or only one of them? Then we will be able to say how critical is this assets and what is the impact will happen to the organization if someone really really compromise this assets. Okay, guys. And also there is also a very nice comparison between privacy and security. We mentioned that privacy usually coming from legal requirements. So for example, one of the privacy he mentioned here clearly, security controls are focused in the CIA attribute confidentiality, while privacy, guys, look at this, data governance requirement that arise when collecting and processing personal data to ensure the right of the subject data. Okay, so this is really privacy here, guys, is not about confidentiality and integrity. This is where we are looking at how we collect data from our customer, how we process this data, are we allowed to share this data with anyone, and what happens if we share this data? This is going to impact my customer in any way. So the rights of the customer, okay, and the right and how we collect the data and how we dispose of the data and how we share this data, how we store this data, is what is privacy is all about. Okay, data security, guys, is really related to the CIA, while data privacy is all about how to really collect the data, how we get the consent of the users about collecting this data, how we gonna store this data, Okay, what kind of controls we do to store this data, and if we're gonna give the end user the right to really to delete this data later on if he wants. Okay, guys. So basically, it's saying here the privacy is a legal requirement, will affect your corporate governance and policies in regards to privacy of user data sync. And don't forget again, where is this legal coming from? Legal coming from external regulator or external industry best practice that push your company to really implement more controls to protect the data. Whether you are collecting data, whether you're storing the data, whether you are getting rid of this data eventually. If you fail to comply with the regulator, you will get huge fines, and also it will really be a bad thing for the organization. One of this really high-ended, I would say, privacy laws that exist in the Europe, and it's really now taking a lot of attention, especially if you are working within Europe, is basically they ask for someone who can implement GDPR. So this is started to really be a job somewhere in the West right now. Is you becoming a GDPR implementer or editor, means you are implementing all the GDPR requirement to really satisfy the requirements when it comes to data classification and the privacy of data. Okay, or you're becoming a GDPR auditor. That means you go and check if the company is really implementing the security controls to protect the data privacy for individuals. And you can see here there is so many points in the GDPR. I'm just highlighting 4 of them, but there is so many things. It's saying, first of all, personal data cannot be collected, processed, or retained without individual information consent. Okay, guys? I will talk about retaining. Retaining is very similar to archiving. Okay, so you cannot really collect data or process this data or even retain it in a database without a consent of the end user. Okay, so if your company is retaining information, okay, or it's having an information about individual which is out their consent, this can be really great deals. And that's why, guys, when you started to visit nowadays some website, especially in the European website or American websites, now they cannot really do anything or collect your browser information or even your IP address or anything or log anything without you saying, you know what, I will accept this cookies. Okay. And when you accept these cookies, basically you are really giving them their consent to collect some data about you. Okay. If you said no, then they cannot really collect any data about you, and they cannot really keep data about you in their website. Okay, so this is the first area in the GDPR, which is all about what? Is all about the consent of end users to really to collect his data and to retain his data. GDPR also provides the right for user to withdraw consent. So maybe you are consent one time to give them your data. Okay, maybe you are subscribed in a website, okay, and they kept all your data in their website, and then later on you don't feel like you want these guys to have your data here, so you can really you are able by law now to withdraw your data. I keep giving my info to a website all day long. Exactly, yes. Okay, and they track you, by the way. So many cookies over there, guys. It's called tracking cookies. Tracking cookies, they know which website you visited before, and now they having a kind of information about what kind of person you are. Yes, exactly. So they know who did you visit and what kind of ads you have seen. And then if they also offering ads, they will customize an ads to you exactly. So if you were visiting, for example, H&M, okay, and then you came to another website for news, right? And then all of a sudden in this website you find an ads for H&M. How did they know that you like H&M? Okay, but they know that's from the cookies. They have something called tracking cookies. So the tracking cookies will check which website you were at, and then they will customize exactly. So if I am really interested to see an apartment or to buy a house, and I visited like Property Finder or my other site that I open, it will show me property from Property Finder. So how did they know this? They tracking you online, and that's why you can withdraw your consent later on from this. So GDPR required data breach notification within. Yes, it's racist. Okay, so I can understand abayas all the day long. You can all find all your abayas styles all day long. Okay, guys. So here in the GDPR, it's required a data breach to be notified to everyone within 27 hours. 72 hours. So if your website has been breached and the data of your customers has been breached, you really need to come back to the customers and to the public and notify about this. If you don't comply with this law, we have seen that you can really get really big fine. That's like what happened with Uber example that we have explained. Okay, warning: data breach can happen accidentally or through malicious interference. Okay, so this is another thing that we really need to know about this. So I'm just gonna give you a small comparison here, guys, between data privacy and data security. They're always saying that the data security is not as data privacy. So data security is all the measure that our organization is taking in order to prevent any third party from authorized access. So this is the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability. I need to ensure that I will ensure confidentiality, integrity, availability for my data. Okay, while data privacy is more like compliance. You need to comply with data protection laws. Okay, that's like something like GDPRs. There is so many of them. I will give you some list of them. And regulator focus on how to collect, process, share, archive, and delete this data. So one again, what is the difference between them? And this is really important. One of them is really about really protecting the data that you have in your infrastructure, okay, and how you can ensure this by the CIA. Another one is the data privacy, is all about how we collect the data, how can we process the data, how we share the data, okay, in a proper way that comply with the regulator and comply with the laws in the country. Especially data privacy, guys, really have to do something with the country you are in. So if you are a country doesn't have any data privacy, so any website can really collect whatever he wants and keep the data as a way he wants, okay, and you don't have to any consent with this. If you are in Europe, for example, you really need to follow GDPR. If you're in the US, they have their own laws and regulator as well. So one of these are measures to protect the data, and one of these guys are really complying with laws and industry practice to how the best way to collect. And again, if you fail to protect the data here, you're gonna lose the business and money. If you failed here, okay, you're gonna lose business, trust, and also a lot of fines as well. Okay, that's why in some organization right now, guys, you have a job which has started to emerge recently called the privacy or data privacy protection officer. So the data privacy protection officer is all about how to protect the customer data and ensure that we are complying with the regulator and the laws within the country. Okay, so this is another thing. General security regulation, the data that is collected and saved is governed by several regulations that are applied based on what a necessary standard. Okay, so another thing that we really need to understand that who is responsible for data inside my organization. Okay, this is another topic because we talked about what is data is all about. Okay, we talked about data types, structured and non-structured. We talked about data classification, talked about so many classification. Another also area in the data that we need to explore is what we call the data responsibilities. Who is responsible for data and what they do exactly towards the data. So in these responsibilities, we will be talking about 2 or 3 responsibilities. One of them is called data owners. Okay, so this is the owner of the data. we have something called data custodians, and for sure the end user who use this data. So this is high level data relationship, organizational responsibilities, not always technical. So we have the data owners. The first one is accountable for specific data, often a senior officer. Okay, who is accountable for certain data? For example, I have a department of HR. Okay, the head of HR usually is responsible for all the data exists in the department of HR. Okay, so this is what we call the data owner. If we wanted to change a permission in this data, we need to go to the data owner, ask his permission. If we want to implement new controls to protect this data, we need to talk with the HR, with the HR directory or the HR, manager. Okay, if we wanted really to back up the data at a certain time, if we wanted to copy this data, if we wanted to do anything, we go back to the HR because he is ultimate responsible for the data. Okay, and we will understand how important this data from this guy. So the criticality and the impact is also gonna get by interviewing the HR. So this is what we call the data owners. And here is saying that's basically the vice presidents of sales own the customer relationship data. What we mean by this, if we have a sales team, the guy who is VP, which is vice president, this is someone a very high in the organization. He will be responsible, or he will be owning, or the data owner of the customer relation data, means all the data that comes from the customers. Okay, like for example, how many products they bought, what kind of products they are interested at, okay, what is the names of the customer and details. All this data will be in a centralized database, and these guys will be able to own this data, so he can set the permission. You can talk to him about what is the best way to back up this data and what is his time recovery objective and all this stuff. Okay, also treasury owns the financial information. They have in a big organization a department called treasury or treasurer. They are the guys who really own the financial information, and they are divided to two parts. So this one part is called treasury or financial processors, and and another department also to implement the financial. So, but end of the day, they are going to be the one who owns all the financial data. Okay, so this is data owner. Okay, also we can talk about data custodian. The data custodian, sometimes they call it the steward, but sometimes it's really data custodian. And the data custodians is the department that's responsible for data accuracy, privacy, and security. Okay, associated sensitivity label to the data. So this is the guys who can say, okay, these data are classified as secret or top secret or public. Okay, they are ensuring also the data custodian ensuring compliance with any applicable law and standards. So these guys, their eyes outside laws and regulation to implement laws and the standard within data custodian department, manage the access rights to the data. So they manage who had access to the data. Okay, implement security controls. طبعا the part of implementing security controls, يعني they implement security controls with the help of the security engineer and the project management from security or IT. So this is also another additional role, the data custodian. Also, we have someone called data protection officer, DPO. Okay, and this is basically as the job that I was telling you guys about that started to emerge, that is responsible for the organization data privacy. He set policies, he implement process and procedures in order to really look at to protect the data privacy. And again, how he set policies, again, from the beginning of the lecture, we said the policies are being set by business goals, business objective, or laws and regulators that comes from outside. So these guys will be looking at the laws and regulators, and then accordingly he will create a policy, and then the procedures later on to tell you step by step how to implement this policy, and finally will be implementing this as a controls. So again, what we have covered today is what is the data is all about, what type of data structure and not structure. And also we talked about classification of data. We talked about two classification exist. Some classification is based on labels. Okay, we talked about this classified, non-classified, or public, or even internal. We also talked about we can do classification based on what kind of data I'm dealing with. Is it financial data? Is it personal identification data? And so on and so forth. So this is another thing. And lastly, we just talked about here about what kind of different department and different responsibility exists within our organization to really handle the data. So, and all of these guys are under one category only, which is called the asset management in the NIST cyber framework. So this is all under this area, the asset management and how to classify the data. So here, data retention policy. And again, what we mean by retention policy here, which is important, retention is all about how to retain the data for a certain period to comply with certain regulation. So, and give you an example here, if you work, for example, in finance, okay, and you have finance records, okay, let's say how many stocks you bought, how many stocks you sold, what kind of order you give, did you give this order by email or by phone calls? All this stuff, guys, record is called very important data for the organization, because basically this is the financial record that's later on you cannot come as a customer and deny that you have done these purchases or these orders. So you need to keep this all data somewhere stored. And somewhere stored means I really need to have an archive system and index this data and then put it in the right format in this place. And then what is the period of time that I need to keep this record? It's again according to the policy. And where I get this policy, I get this policy from basically from the regulator or the industry standard. So the regulator will say, you know what, you need to keep all your financial record for 10 years. This is will drive the policy, and the policy will drive the controls that you need to implement an archive system that will be able to hold the data for 10 years. So you really need to purchase the hard drives, the systems, and everything that can really satisfy this requirement. So this is retention policy in very easy way, okay? So that data retention is a set of policies, procedures, and tools for managing the storage of persistent data, so the data that will last for a long time. Organization may be legally bound يعني coming from the legal department or the compliance department, okay, to retain certain type of data for a specific or specified period to meet compliance and e-discovery requirements. Why? Because you need later on, you have a dispute with one of your customers saying, you know what, I didn't buy this stock, okay, you guys bought for me something I didn't really know, okay? So how we can prove if this guy is saying the truth or no? He will go to the regulator, or he will go to the maybe the finance regulator in this country and saying, I have a claim against this bank. Okay, they did something for me I didn't want it. Okay, so how they will investigate this? They will come back to the bank and say, you know what, this customer saying that you already bought for him something he didn't want. Okay, so you need to go back to your archive situation. You look for this calls, or you look for his email and saying, you know what, he sent us this email, he made this calls, and he already purchased this with his full discretions. Now he cannot deny this. So now the archive solution is kind of will give you the non-repudiation, okay, and will satisfy the legal requirement in this case. So this is basically the data retentions. Okay, again, it's a process or the organization used to maintain the existence and control. Okay. Okay. So always data preservation, guys, refer to information that's kept for a specific purpose outside an organization. Data retention policy. So backup and archiving tools are used to fulfill the requirement of data retention. Short-term retention is determined by how often the youngest media set are overwritten. Long-term retention is any data moved to an archive storage to prevent being overwritten. Okay, guys. So this is also part of retention that you really need to look at. So, for example, if you're doing backup, guys, backup usually as a solution is very quick. It can copy the data here, okay, and the backup will save the data maybe for 30 days, okay. What happens after 30 days? The new data will come and will override the data exists here. Okay, if it override the data exists here and you don't have any other solution, then means that you lost the data that exists here 30 days ago. Okay, so what the solution is? So what you do is you have a short-term backup, which is for 30 days, and then you have a long-term backup, which is the archive system that can last for 1 year. Okay, and every time your backup here solution is the hard drive is full, or maybe the tapes drive is full, they will start to copy the data to the archive, and that will allow you to overwrite whatever in your very young, I would say, not young, recent backup here over here. So this will free space for more stuff to backup here. And again, backup solution usually very fast compared to the archive solution, but it's very expensive because we are using SSD hard drive, and sometimes we use something called library tape, which is very expensive. Okay, so this is also part of it. Okay, data sharing. This is also a topic. How can we share data, and what is really our responsibility if we share data with another customer, okay, or with another organization, or with a sister organization? So I think that the rule model here, guys, you can outsource a service or activity, but not the legal responsibility for it. So read this very carefully, okay? So you know what you can really outsource, okay? What we mean by outsource, okay, means that I can really go to cloud solution like AWS and say, you know what, I wanted an instance, EC2, I wanted to really build a web server, and I would put my data here in AWS, okay? So this is really outsourcing some service or outsourcing an infrastructure. But at the same time, who is the ultimate response for the data here in the website? It's not going to be AWS. AWS, if you get hacked, it's your problem, okay? So when you really share data over a shared medium, like the internet or the cloud solution, okay, you still as a company are responsible. So if someone hacked Uber instance in the cloud, they will not say AWS been compromised. They will say Uber has been compromised. Data and Uber, because end of day, AWS doesn't have to do anything. It's your ultimate responsibility to protect your data instance in the cloud, and you need to protect your web server in the cloud. So this is what it's really need to be done. And then we have something called share responsibilities module. I maybe showed you guys last time when we talked about cloud. Share responsibilities means some responsibilities is falling on the cloud service provider, and some responsibility is falling into you as an end customer, or someone who is really using this. There's some agreements that we really need to look at. This service level agreement, SLA, interconnection security agreement, ISA, and non-disclosure agreements. This is between you and the person that you shared with him these resources. It comes to me one really specific thing here, guys, is non-disclosure agreements. Means when you get someone to work in your company, okay, and he gonna see all your secrets, okay, all the things that you build inside the company, all your financial data. These guys, when he leaves the company, he need to write a non-disclosure agreement. Means he cannot go and use this company and use its data in someone else, okay, or not disclosing this data to someone else. And that's why, for example, if you do bin testing, okay, and you have a bin testing, this is the guys that I'm gonna use him for bin testing. Before he start his bin testing, this is called rule of engagement. And the rule of the engagement part, okay, he need to run, or he need to sign non-disclosure agreement. What we mean by this, whatever vulnerability he find here, okay, whatever system he will interact with, whatever information I will give him as a company to do his job as a penetration testing, he cannot disclose it to someone else. Okay, guys? And if we find he disclosed this vulnerability or this data to someone else, he will be held legal, or he will be held responsible for this kind of leakage, and he can be taken to the jail. Because we have already a non-disclosure agreement. Guys, you can see also what is service level agreement later on and see. Okay, so we talked a lot about all this stuff, nice stuff about data, and data classification, data owners, and data responsibilities, and what type of data we see. Come to the point which is important for us. Which is important is basically, okay, I mean now not all the data is the same in my organization. I need to classify the data. I understand there is a difference between normal data protection and privacy protections according to what we have said. Okay, now we came to the really fun part. Why? Because we already talked about policies, okay, and how policies will drive data classification. And then finally, after we already classified some data is important, we really need to do this last thing that we learned throughout the course, which is basically the implementation of security controls or privacy controls. Okay, guys. So here in this objective of this area, it's saying giving a scenario, implement configuration changes to existing control to improve security, understand the importance of data privacy and protection. So in this section, guys, we'll be looking at different type of controls that one of them can really protect the data, which is the CIA, which is we already covered in so many times, and some of them are really protection controls for privacy. So how can I really make sure I will hide information about my customers, okay, or I hide their identity, or I hide their information profiles, okay, so it's will not gonna cause me any trouble as someone invading their privacy. So here, the first thing that we really need to look at is, again, access control, especially if we're talking about technical data protection. And again, how can we ensure access control? What's saying here, guys, in order to really implement access control, you need to understand what systems I'm dealing with in general. And I mentioned before to you guys, IT system consists of network, okay, and then operating system level and application level. For sure, the user who is using all the stuff. So in order to implement access control, and access control will ensure data confidentiality, I need to ensure access control or file permission to the network. So maybe I have a laptop and I'm connected to the wireless. How can I ensure access control identity here? Okay, if I'm looking to an operating system, how can I ensure access control? If I'm using an application or access files in my operating systems, how can I ensure permission and security? So this is what it's trying to explain here, that you really need to implement access control model, can apply it in everywhere, or software resources like file system security, network security, database security. Each record is an ACL, is called an access control entry, ACE, NTFS, EXT3 and EXT4, ZVS. So what it's really saying here, guys, each record is an access control list. So here, if I have a file in Windows, for example, and it's saying that file in Windows does follow the format of NTFS, okay, these files, guys, will have a permission, okay, this permission, they called it access control list, and this access control list, it will allow only certain users, okay, to access or to have an access entry to this file. So when you, for example, have a file here, okay, let's say this file, okay, okay, and you right click and you go to properties over here, okay, this is what access control looks like. This is what kind of access they have. So if I, for example, I said I wanted to access, add access to someone here, so I'll give access to everyone. I will say enter. So this is kind of access control entries. Okay, means it will be applied in these files as the way that we did the access control list in firewall. It will check who is accessing this file. If it didn't match any of one of these, it will have an implicit deny. Okay, guys? So this is kind of things that also Windows are doing it using the NTFS. So this is kind of things that I was just explaining here. It's very similar to what we have already. طبعا Linux, they have the same exact thing. Okay, I don't know if you have tried change mode command before in Linux, but change mode command in Linux before, or change owner, will allow you to create different change mode. Okay, and change owner, this kind of commands, guys, that will allow you to change permission in Linux, in Linux operating system, and this will create an access list for what is who is able to access. Okay, database security allow for more fine-grained permission configuration. So what we mentioned here that database also does have their own permissions to access the database, and it can allow you to access certain table or certain even rows, or according to what the administrator will give you a permission at. So this will allow you to find. We remember that we used to teach a whole course about database permission and how can we assign database permission. So this is a long topic. We can really explore it. Okay. Also, guys, one of the really techniques that's important for data protection, which is really important, again, encryption. And encryption is all about here is you need to ensure encryption for data at rest, data in transit, which is data in motion, or data in use. And it's saying basically here that data at rest means, well, the data is residing in your database or in your hard drive. So you really need to make sure that you do some sort of encryption, which is here is symmetric encryption. Data in transit, where the data is moving from site to site or from the user to a website, and this is something like the TLS and WPA2. Then we are using mix between symmetric and asymmetric encryption algorithms. Data in use between, it's active data, okay, is stored in a non-resistant digital states, which is basically when you are accessing a website, the data now is processed within the CPUs and memory of this website. So we really need to protect the data in use, because there's some attacks that was really attacking OpenSSL. It managed to really reach to the data in use and really extract very important information about users. We call this Heartbleed. It's very interesting to read about Heartbleed attack and how it's done. Okay, and see that data at also processing, data in use can be also attacked, and how can we really implement security controls to really ensure data at use. So it's saying that's typically in computer random access memory or CPU caches, or CPU registers, data in use is protected by secure processing mechanism. We will talk about the secure processing mechanism in one specific time, inshallah, when we had time next time. Okay, so DLP, data loss preventions. I have already talked to you guys about data loss preventions earlier today, but here, if you wanted me to remind you about the data prevention, this is the main issue with the data prevention. Okay, we can implement really secure database. Okay, and that database will be allowing us to really stop people to get to our database. Okay, but again, what user can do, especially the user who I give them a permission, they can copy this data and really move it somewhere else, or even move it to their laptops, or maybe copy it in the hard USB, or maybe send it by email as a screenshot. So I really need to have a layer here in between, can monitor the user access to the database and really saying if it's comply with a certain policies that I will define. So this is basically what the data prevention is all about. So the data prevention is a software, okay, solution that enable the business to discover, classify, monitor and protect data intuitively with zero friction to the user experience. Okay, so basically the user will not feel there's a data DLP is working, but the DLP would be working in the background. The way the DLP is working, guys, is easy. So I will have a DLP solution, okay, installed. This is going to be the server, okay, and in the server, I will come to the database and install client of these servers, okay, and maybe if I have web application, I will install a client here as well, and all of connected is to the server, okay, and we have the users, and the user accessing here, okay, there is a policy saying, okay, if the user start to copy, okay, I need to deny this copy. So basically, according to the policy that I will write here in the data prevention loss techniques. Okay, so here it's saying audit behavior in real time with risk adaptive protection to stop data loss before it occurs. So this is basically a preventive techniques. Why? Because it can really deny his access or copying before he really can sneak something out. So this is not a detection techniques. How it works, DLP can scan both structured and unstructured format. We talked about this before. So it can really look at your database and non-database files. DLP is subject to the security policy. So you create and implement security policy. You say, for example, no BEDF allowed to be sent out to the organization. No Excel sheets will be sent out. So this is gonna be the policies that you will set. DLP is subject to the security policy, so the transfer of content can then be blocked if it does not conform with the predefined policy. Okay, DLP system act with a policy violation is detected by, it can alert the administrator, it can block, it can quarantine if you are sending email, or can it do tombstones. DLP remediation can occur using client-side or server-side mechanism. Means what? Client-side that and server-side that I have one server and I install clients all over the network, or I can install a client that monitor the user activity. So this is the client-side thing. Okay, so this is the DLP solution. DLP solution is a big thing. I will share with you some resources how DLP works in YouTube. It's really nice to watch. Okay. This is also DLP. It's keeps saying the same thing that we have already talked about last time. So this is already here. Okay, this is one of the technology that is used right now, guys, to really hide the private data. So this is de-identification. Okay, so all this other stuff that I have already mentioned here, encryption, access controls, this is technical data protection for your data, but not for your privacy. Okay, starting from this specific page, which is page, I think, 32, guys. From this specific page, we are looking at certain technology, certain technology that can really protect your identity and protect your privacy. So we'll talk about de-identification. This is methods and technologies that really remove identity information from data before it's distributed. So it's kind of protect my privacy. So de-identification is often implemented of a part of database design. So when you implement your database design, in order really to make sure your data will be hidden from the praying eyes, and also when you are dealing with the data outside, so no one can recognize who you are. So you can do data masking, you can do tokenizations, you can do also banding, and you can do re-identification. So all of these are techniques. I try to really all of them here. So if we don't even have a time, I wanted you guys to look at them as much as you can when we finish the lecture. As I mentioned, I'm trying to really cover as much as I can, but we really don't have sometimes the time to cover everything. So let's look at the tokenization. It's basically, in a very simple term, it replaces sensitive data with a non-sensitive data for as a placeholder. So for example, this is SSN, social security number. The social security number is a big thing. This is your identity in US. That's why they always don't share your SSN with anyone, because it can really lead to identity theft. So here, it will replace this number, which is very obvious. It's your SSN to something that's no one could recognize. So this will be your identification from now on. Okay, it's very common with credit card processing. Okay, so when we see tokenization is implemented in the industry of credit card processing, it uses a temporary token during payment. So when you pay, okay, instead of your card details will be showing, it will show a temp number or a temp token. Okay, an attacker who captured these card numbers cannot use them later on. Why? Because it's not really representing the real number, guys. Okay, so far so good. So we understand what is that all about, tokenization is all about. It's, by the way, tokenization, guys, he mentioned here clearly, it's not encryption, okay? It's not hashing, it's something else, it's replacement, okay? And the replacement, only the holder can knows about it, okay? So, and I will show you the full diagram. So the original data and token aren't mathematically related, okay? No encryption overhead, so this tokenization doesn't use any encryption. So how it's been done? So this is the diagram over here. It explains the tokenization. Okay, so this is basically an 8 or 9 steps to do tokenization. So user registered credit card on their mobile number. So this is the credit card number. So this is the first step. Okay, the second step, car is registered with the token service servers. So you have a service servers, and the servers here, guys, it will take your credit card number, and it will give you something called what? Token. Okay, so this is your token right now. Okay, and you can see it's not related at all with your credit card number at all. Now, the server here, the token, after initiating for you this number, it will send it to you back here. So the token service server provide a token instead of this number. Which token? Which is 4111111 and 1234. So you get the token. Right now, phone is used in the store during checkout using NFC, and this is actually is used a lot, guys, when you have something like Google Pay or Apple Pay. So now you can pay with your application. So the token now that it shows in your phone is basically what you get from this service. Okay, what happened is your phone will be showing the token. You will pay with your credit card, but what shows is the token number. Okay, and then once you pay, okay, what happened is the server here, the merchant payment processing systems, they don't understand the token. They have no idea what this token is all about. So they will contact back your service server, okay, and they saying, card number validation. Okay, I have this token, okay, from these users. Let me see if this token is really related to a credit card who has funds and working. And if they got the token is valid, okay, what happened is your transaction will be approved. Okay, I know it's like a long story, but this is how it's been done. So everyone is clear how it's done, guys? Okay, so you are not really showing your credit numbers, your credit card numbers is not saved in the application anymore. You're getting a token from a service, and when the merchant start to really wanted to understand who you are, he will go back to your service provider for tokens, and they will get the number. Now your credit card is not involved anyway. So even if someone look at your phone at that time, you will see only the token, and the token only valid for this transaction because the token is temporary. So next time you initiate another purchase, it will be giving you a different token. So this is how we really hide our identification and our credit card numbers. Okay, guys? I think this is enough for today. We're already on time. Sorry, again, there is some other slides that you guys can go and cover as well. So this slides is what is about data masking, how data masking is working. I'm giving you an example here of data masking, okay? And anonymizations as well. You really need to read about it. And this is also some technology like digital rights management. This is a digitalized way to really to protect your copyrights. And finally, this is a diagram for a nice threats and how threats are related to assets value and how we calculate the risk and all this stuff. So this is will be the end of the lecture today. Okay, I hope this was informative for you guys, and looking forward to see you guys tomorrow, inshallah. Any questions so far? Any questions? Okay, great. Okay, guys, thank you very much. Have a great day. Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.